Picture this. You're standing on the edge of Cloud City, the wind howling, your hand just got sliced off, and your dad, the galaxy's #1 space goth, is offering to team up and overthrow the boss. Do you say no and fall into the abyss, like in the movie? Or do you say yes and become the scariest daddy-son duo the galaxy has ever seen? That one choice could flip Star Wars upside down and shake the entire saga to its core. Now hold up, think about it. If Luke actually joined Vader, we're not talking about some minor butterfly effect like Lando wearing a different cape. We're talking about no return of the Jedi, no redemption arc, no Ewoks dancing around a campfire with helmets as drums. Instead, we get a straight-up family business takeover. And Palpatine sitting there like a wrinkled CEO wondering how his interns suddenly got promoted to management. And I know what you're thinking. Would Palpatine actually allow this? Or would he immediately start plotting Luke's downfall because he hates sharing power, more than Jar Jar hates subtlety? Vader clearly wants a partner, but he also still has that whole Sith jealousy issue going on. So the father-son bonding sessions would last until one of them got cranky and force-choked the other during dinner. Thanksgiving would be a nightmare. But imagine the visuals for a second. Vader and Luke side by side, lightsabers blazing, storming through the halls of the Death Star like a rock concert from hell. The rebels would never stand a chance. Leia would be forced into the most tragic role imaginable. And Han would stay a frozen wall decoration because nobody's got time to save him when there's galactic domination on the schedule. The whole saga becomes darker, faster, and far more brutal. And here's the part that hits hard. Star Wars has always been about choice, about one decision echoing through generations. If Luke says yes, the symbol of hope becomes the symbol of fear. And the Skywalker legacy shifts from tragedy and redemption to tragedy and domination. It's chilling, it's fascinating, and honestly it makes you want to scream at the screen even though it never happened. That's how fragile the entire galaxy really was. In this video, we're going to dive headfirst into that alternate reality. We'll break down what changes instantly, who survives, who falls faster, and whether Luke and Vader could actually rule the galaxy together without tearing each other apart. Get ready for betrayal, broken destiny, and maybe just a few laughs along the way. Because if Star Wars taught us anything, it's that nothing, and I mean nothing, ever goes according to plan. Imagine the moment on Cloud City, Luke dangling above the abyss, Vader extending his gloved hand, and instead of rejecting him, Luke says, yes. Suddenly the galaxy's most famous cliffhanger turns into a brand new story. No screaming, no leap of faith, no Millennium Falcon rescue, just father and son, walking side by side back into the corridors of Bespin. That tiny shift could send shockwaves through every corner of Star Wars history. First, picture Han frozen in carbonite while Luke is already aligning with Vader. Lando's betrayal would barely register because Luke's decision overshadows everything. Leia would be left scrambling with Chewie, C-3PO, and R2, desperately trying to escape Cloud City without Luke to help them. The rebellion would lose its shining symbol of hope in a single instant. And the Empire would suddenly gain its most dangerous recruit. Now would Luke immediately become a Sith apprentice, or would Vader try to ease him in? Vader is still technically bound to the Emperor, but with Luke he suddenly has leverage. That infamous line about ruling the galaxy as father and son becomes more than just a dramatic plea. It becomes a real possibility. And Palpatine's entire scheme is suddenly at risk. Think about how fast this domino effect would spiral. Training under Yoda cut short, the prophecy twisted, the Skywalker line corrupted earlier than anyone expected. The Empire could strengthen faster, but also fracture sooner, depending on how Palpatine reacts. Luke's curiosity about his own family might blind him to the larger manipulation going on behind the curtain. It's the ultimate what if, because Luke joining Vader isn't just about one choice, it's about rewiring the entire foundation of the saga. From that second, the rebellion is weakened, Vader's ambitions are fueled, and Palpatine's carefully balanced chessboard is suddenly flipped upside down. You know what really drives me crazy about this scenario? The fact that it exposes just how fragile the rebellion actually was. Everyone paints the Alliance as this unstoppable tide of justice, but in reality, they were hanging by a thread. One Jedi reject away from total collapse. Luke's turn on Cloud City would have been the galaxy's biggest "are you kidding me" moment. Leia, who had already lost Alderaan, would suddenly be forced to fight her own brother. Han's frozen popsicle fate would stay the same, but without Luke, there's no daring rescue at Jabba's palace. The plan fails before it begins. Lando might still try to make amends, but with Luke now Vader's shadow, what difference would it really make? And Vader? Let's be real, this guy was not exactly winning Father of the Year. He cuts off his son's hand, traumatizes him, then says, "Hey buddy, join me and we'll take down my boss." And if Luke says yes, suddenly all of Palpatine's plotting about the younger Skywalker blows up in his wrinkly face. Frustrating doesn't even cover it. Because here's the problem. The entire saga builds up Luke as the counterbalance to Vader, the spark that lights the fire of resistance. If that spark goes dark, everything collapses. The Battle of Endor never happens, the second Death Star stands, and Ewoks go from celebrating to serving as Imperial roadkill. The whole thing spirals out of control faster than you can say force choke. It's maddening because Star Wars keeps telling us destiny is fixed. Yet a single choice proves it was never guaranteed. And that means all the speeches about hope and prophecy and chosen ones are hanging on the flimsiest of threads. There's also something deeply tragic about imagining Luke stepping to Vader's side. Think about Yoda on Dagobah, waiting for a pupil who never returns. The old master spends his final years in exile, not just in failure, but in crushing loneliness. Obi-Wan's sacrifice on the Death Star becomes meaningless, because the boy he died protecting has abandoned everything he stood for. Leia would bear the heaviest weight. Already shouldering the burden of leadership, she would now face the impossible task of fighting her own twin. She doesn't even know the truth yet in Empire Strikes Back, which makes the eventual revelation all the more devastating. Her brother isn't her ally anymore. He's the weapon aimed at her heart. Han, trapped in carbonite, would become a symbol of what the rebellion had lost rather than what it could save. The daring rescue from Jabba's palace is one of Star Wars' most joyful moments, but in this alternate timeline, it never comes. The audience is robbed of that reunion, and Leia is robbed of the love that kept her anchored. Meanwhile, Luke himself wouldn't escape sorrow. He'd carry the crushing guilt of abandoning his friends, betraying the ideals he barely began to understand. Vader promises power, but that power is built on ashes. It would corrode Luke from the inside, turning his youthful optimism into bitterness. The galaxy thrives on symbols, and Luke was supposed to be that symbol of light. Watching that light extinguish so quickly would cast the entire saga in shadow. Not just for the characters, but for the audience who once believed in him. But let's not lie, there's also something awe-inspiring about the raw potential here. Imagine Luke and Vader side by side, storming the halls of Imperial power. Father and son lightsabers igniting in perfect unison. Palpatine sitting on his throne, suddenly realizing that for the first time in decades, he's the one outnumbered. That's the kind of visual that gives goosebumps just thinking about it. Picture a battle where Luke, still young and unrefined, channels his anger to levels Yoda warned about. Now, instead of fumbling with training remotes, he's dismantling squadrons of stormtroopers with frightening ease. The rebellion, the Empire, even the underworld factions like Jabba and Black Sun would be staring at the rise of a new dynasty. And Vader, for all his rage and darkness, would finally feel something he hadn't in years. Pride. Pride in his son. For the first time, the man who was Anakin Skywalker could believe in a future where he isn't a pawn, but a ruler alongside his bloodline. That twisted hope adds a terrifying majesty to the scenario. The galaxy under a Skywalker rule would be unstoppable. Luke's youth and Vader's experience would make them the ultimate 1-2 punch. Jedi archives rediscovered, Sith secrets exploited, and the galaxy's political systems reshaped overnight. Whether you like it or not, the sheer scale of what they could achieve is jaw-dropping. It's awe in the truest sense. Not admiration of goodness, but shock at the overwhelming vision of what could have been. A saga not of rebellion and redemption, but of domination and legacy. And yet, even in this bleak alternate history, hope would find a way to spark. Leia, who always embodied resilience, would not simply surrender. Her leadership would only sharpen, her conviction only deepen, knowing she was the last Skywalker standing on the side of light. That irony alone could fuel a whole new rebellion. Han, if he were eventually freed by Lando or others, could become a reluctant leader. His cynicism might shift into something greater, because without Luke, he'd be forced to step up in ways he never expected. Chewie by his side, blaster in hand, maybe Han finally becomes more than just a charming rogue, and the galaxy itself. We've seen again and again that tyranny never holds forever. From the fall of the Republic to the cracks in the Empire, oppression creates its own resistance. Even with Luke gone to the dark, whispers of rebellion would continue to grow. Hope is stubborn like that. It refuses to die. Maybe someone like Ahsoka emerges from the shadows to rally the survivors. Maybe Mon Mothma leads with even greater fire. Maybe even small groups of rebels, inspired by Leia's courage, manage to plant the seeds of future uprisings. The galaxy doesn't stop moving just because its brightest star flickers out. So yes, Luke's choice could devastate everything we know, but Star Wars has always thrived on the persistence of hope. It might burn smaller, quieter and slower, but it would still burn. In the end, the tragedy of Luke joining Vader is that it makes too much sense. The Skywalker story has always been about temptation, about choices that echo across generations. Anakin chose fear, Padme chose compassion, and Luke chose defiance. Change just one of those, and everything unravels. Luke and Vader ruling together wouldn't be a fairy tale. It would be a slow-motion collapse, father and son circling closer to Palpatine's trap, even as they believe they're escaping it. The Sith don't share power, they consume it. Sooner or later, Luke and Vader would turn on each other, and the galaxy would pay the price. The rebellion might fight longer, Leia might endure more suffering, but eventually the same cycle would play out. Betrayal, death, and despair. Only now the faces leading that spiral would be the very ones who were supposed to save it. That is the cruelest twist. And that's what makes the original moment so powerful. Luke saying no, choosing pain, choosing faith in something beyond power. That choice is what defines Star Wars. Without it, we get a story of tragedy, not triumph. A saga of shadows, not light. So when we imagine this alternate timeline, it's both fascinating and horrifying. Because Star Wars reminds us that destiny is fragile, but choice is everything. And Luke's one decision on Cloud City kept the galaxy from falling into a darkness it might never escape.
Thank you for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that share button. My main channel is Critical Analysis Hub, where I post Star Wars content about the movies. My secondary channel is Critical Analysis Hub Plus, where I focus on the shows of Star Wars. And my third channel is Critical Analysis Hub XP, where I post comic books. Be sure to take a moment and check them out. Thanks, and may the Force be with you.